Welcome back to the CPL Newsroom presented by Volkswagen. It's a Thursday, which meant that we didn't have any Trap Remix highlight reel intro. A lot of the CPL action was quite a while ago now. So what we're going to do today on this show is we will get into the CPL. We'll go all the way around the league and recap a lot of the storylines and headlines and things going into the transfer market. But that'll be at the end of this show because we have to start, Mitchell, with the biggest news in Canadian soccer at the moment. Canadian men's national team in a Copa América quarterfinal tomorrow,
Crazy.
Friday night. Crazy against Venezuela. Second place in Group A, beat Peru, draw with Chile. Mitchell, just from the face of it, on like the first gut feeling, how excited are you to be facing the prospect of a quarterfinal and a game against Venezuela, which obviously not easy, but genuinely should be quite competitive?
Yeah, I think it's something that you just have to enjoy. Like it's a knockout match, a quarterfinal at the oldest continental competition in world football. It's a historic moment for this Canadian men's national team, and again, it's the fact that they're able to reach a knockout stage this early in the process under Jesse Marsch with a lot of their players that we know can and will play better, not only in the futures but can at this tournament play better is an amazing sign for this team. So again, it's one of those pinch yourself moments as a Canadian soccer fan where like I guess we've sort of seen the team get to this progression qualifying for a World Cup, topping CONCACAF World Cup qualifying, but the fact that they're here now, you just have to enjoy it. And 10 years ago when they I think scored like one goal in an entire calendar year, like it's so ridiculously different. Obviously, they scored one goal in a Copa America group stage, but again, they did everything else right and got out of it. So it's just
Yeah.
crazy to see how far this team has progressed in like a decade's time.
Yeah, we've had some dark times. There's no shame in admitting that things are a lot better now for the Canadian national team. But you mentioned there that watching this Canada team at the group stage, like yeah, they got through, but as you've kind of said before, they haven't necessarily played to the level that we think that they can. You think there is another gear to go? Can you just? I know you've had some thoughts on this. Just why is that maybe a good sign for you?
Well, I think it's a good sign because at the end of the day, one of the most important factors in soccer, as much as it goes beyond tactics and all of that, is mentality, and that's the biggest reason they are where they are. They have dealt with back to back to back, basically away matches against in some really hostile environments, tough temperatures, that kind of thing, and the
Yeah,
way they've been able to keep their heads against opponents who are relentlessly trying to get them off of their game and uh in competitive games, like it's been immensely impressive, holding on to late leads or late draws against teams who are desperately trying to save their tournaments. Like just about everything from a mentality standpoint has been on point for this team. And then from there, like the tactics and the everything else around a team that's been with a new coach for a month, that can be
yeah,
built on. So and it will, I think, there's so many players on this Canadian team that we've seen already in the Canadian shirt reach a much higher standard and level than this. And again, if you can progress through a group of this caliber with not everything clicking quite right, that's huge. That's really big.
yeah. It absolutely is. I mean, we're gonna get more kind of detailed into playing Venezuela in a bit, but let's just look back at this group stage, kind of put a bow on it. 1-1-1, two clean sheets in the last two games, played very well against Argentina. Where do we kind of stand on this? Because I think we have talked about it a bit. This is a Canada team that in 10 halves under Jesse Marsch, including those two friendlies, they've conceded in two of them. The second half against the Netherlands and the second half against Argentina. They've only scored one goal though. So they are obviously in a very good position. They're in a quarterfinal, but are we concerned that the goals haven't been there yet?
I think yes. I mean, defensively, it's been miles better than I think we thought it was going to be from so many levels. I mean, they have a center back pairing that has almost instantly clicked and been fantastic. Alistair Johnson's been playing excellent. Alfonso Davies
Yeah.
has really been, very quickly after a tough second half against the Netherlands. He's been pretty lights out in the rest of his game, and everyone else in the 11 has really taken to their defensive responsibilities brilliantly, which I think, again, at the end of the day, in tournament football, we've seen how important that is, and that's the baseline for getting through, is just not allowing goals. That's massive. I'm almost less concerned about their attack because, again, we've seen these guys, Jonathan David, Kyle Larin, Steven Eustachio, Alphonso Davies. Like, we've seen a lot of these guys score in Canadian colors before. Maybe not so much against the tier 1 opposition, which becomes a bit of a concern, but we have seen them score before. Yeah. Again, that is the next phase, and you do need to score goals, obviously, now that you're in the knockout stage to progress, unless you get through on penalties, which I don't think this Canadian team's going to want to. No, nor do I really back them in a penalty shootout at this stage in their.
I'd back Max Crepeau. I don't know if I'd back.
That's true. Yeah, I'd back Max Crepeau for just about anything at this point, given what he's shown in this competition. I feel like, he sometimes is. Well, no, he hasn't really been the forgotten piece, but I haven't mentioned him so far. So obviously you have to, because a lot of the defensive numbers look completely different if Max Crepeau isn't making some of those outstanding saves he has so far. But yeah, I think there are concerns about the attack, but I'd be more concerned if we were talking about the defense at this stage than if we were talking about the attacking unit.
Yeah, fair enough. And I mean, that's tournament football, right? Like, this is, as you've kind of alluded to, something that Canada needs to learn how to do, is to win ugly, to win when you're not necessarily at your very best in attacking. Like, you're not going to, it's very rare that you're winning games at tournaments, even against teams that you have a skill advantage on. It's very rare that you're beating them like 3-0 at tournament football. Like, we've seen a ton of that at the Euros. We've seen plenty of that at Copa America here. That's just not how it works. You win ugly games. You win games where maybe you are a little bit better, but it's just a fluky moment that you score by. Like, that's how you get through these moments, and that's something that this team had to learn before the World Cup in 2026. It's something that it kind of got a harsh lesson in Qatar. It kind of on the opposite end of it, where they didn't know how to do that. They showed that they couldn't get those results, even or turn those performances into results. And here we are seeing a change in that mentality, as you mentioned. I think that is very, very important. So Venezuela, though, let's talk about this, because this is, I think an underratedly difficult game. Like I know a lot of people that maybe haven't watched the whole tournament or are maybe tuning into their first Copa America or have even seen them in the past. Venezuela is not a traditional power in CONMEBOL. They've been past the quarterfinals of this tournament once, and that was in 2011. They've never been at a World Cup. They're currently, they're currently ranked 54th in the world, Canada 48th, but they went 3-0 and won Group B. They beat Ecuador, they beat Mexico, they beat Jamaica. All three teams, by the way, who are ranked higher than them in the FIFA rankings. Not that we necessarily need to put much stock in those, but still, it is kind of indicative of where Venezuela have been over the last few years. They were bottom of the table at the last CONMEBOL World Cup qualifying. Right now, they're fourth in this year's one. They've drawn with Brazil. They beat Paraguay. They beat Chile. Mitchell, how should we be feeling about Canada's chances going into this one, specifically looking at Venezuela as an opposition and what kind of a challenge they'll be?
Yeah, I mean, challenge is a good word. I think, well, for one thing, if we look at kind of the projected World Cup rankings, I think they're probably somewhere up in the 30s right now, based on, like you said, beating 3 opponents who are above them. So if you want to look at those numbers again, which are not arbitrary, but don't always tell the full story, that's why they've already leapfrogged a bunch of teams considering their recent performances. And this is a team that in a lot of ways is just going to be really tricky for Canada from a stylistic standpoint. Like, they're a team that likes to sit behind the ball. They're super well organized. We've seen Canada, and we mentioned the offensive struggles. Those have mostly come against teams that are, even if they have 10, sitting back, well organized, tough to break down. Canada's offensive moments have almost exclusively come in transition. in the past few games. The opportunities to do that are going to be few and far between, probably against this Venezuela side. And a lot of quality players. I mean, Solomon Rondon, a player who a few years back was bagging double digits in the Prem, just won the CONCACAF Champions Cup with Pachuca, obviously beating Jason Russell Rowe and Calvary's Mo Farsi in the final. The wee man.
Sorry. Let me catch all these names you're dropping here.
Yeah, exactly. The wee man from Venezuela who used to play for Toronto FC, Jefferson Soteldo, has been a mainstay with this team for a while now, playing in Brazil. They've got a lot of guys playing in La Liga. Herrera, who's obviously a player who people recognize from NYCFC. Yeah,
He's at
this is a team
Girona
with.
now.
Pardon?
He's at Girona now.
Exactly. Yeah, which
Yeah,
we're
in the
obviously.
Liga, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did I say Liga?
No, I said in Serie A, and I was like, that's wrong.
Okay.
You're good. You're good. You don't
You
even
made
need
me
to
doubt
listen.
myself. I'm getting lost in all the names I'm dropping here. But yeah, again, to wrap it up, like there are these names. There is a lot of
Mhm.
quality individually and obviously in what they've done at this tournament collectively with this Venezuela team. So this is going to be a big challenge up there for the biggest Canada's faced so far this tournament. Again, they've learned how difficult group games are at major competitions. Knockout games are a whole nother level
Oh,
because
yeah.
teams start to believe and really see that, we win one game, we're in the final four, and then all bets are off. And that's the case for Canada. That's also the case for a Venezuela team that will be, like you said, they've only done that once before. So they'll be pretty intent to do that again.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And this feels like a moment where they absolutely can. Um, I've kind of like I think there are things about Venezuela that maybe remind me of Canada as being a team, especially maybe a Canada of a couple of years ago, as being a little bit on this upward trajectory. They are a bit of a younger team than they have been before, but still have a lot of those very veteran pieces. You mentioned Rondon, obviously 34, and he is their top goal scoring threat still, obviously, but he's surrounded by a more, a newer and a rising cast. A lot of these players playing in Brazil and things like that, but they've also got a 21-year-old John Aramburu, who's a very good fullback playing for Real Sociedad, and that it's kind of a transitional team, but it's maybe a team that is almost getting there earlier than they expected, because at this point they are intent on making this deep run at Copa America. They do feel like they can absolutely qualify for the World Cup, and I mean it is expanded, so a ton of CONMEBOL teams are going to get into this World Cup, but Venezuela are intending to be one of them. But this should be a different game, right? Like it's not like the Argentina game at all, obviously, for tons of reasons. That's not no team is like Argentina. It's not like the Chile game because Venezuela are just faster than them. They might not what they don't have in maybe some of the experience that the Chileans have, they make up for in their pace and their directness and their determination like that. But do you think, Mitchell, that maybe if this is a bit more of a fast-paced, maybe slightly more open game, is that something that this Canada team could use to its advantage?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at this point, the more open the game, the better for Canada, considering what we've seen from them offensively. It will be interesting to see how they approach this tactically. Obviously, Tajon Buchanan being a huge loss for this team. We haven't seen him play the way up to his standards so far this competition. We haven't seen him start the past at least the past two matches, I believe, which was a big surprise considering he plays for a top 10 club in the world for a reason. And that's going to be a big factor in this game, kind of regardless. But yeah, I think again, if this game can open up, if Canada can find ways to, as with any team, get in behind, use their wide attacking options, be that Larea, Schaffelberg, Miller, Davies on the overlap. Like there is a lot of quality in this Canadian team in transition, and we've seen that throughout this tournament. So, it will be about being excellent in those moments and also finding ways again when Venezuela are sitting a little bit further back.
Mhm.
How can you break them down? How can you again be clinical in those moments in the attacking third, and that's really going to be a big difference maker for Canada in this game, as much as it's going to be obviously stopping the Venezuela threats, and when they're in transition, being smart. And Rondon's a world-class striker in terms of his hold-up ability, so that's going to be a massive challenge for Cornelius and Bombito, which will be fun to see them get to go up against a player like that. So a lot to really be intrigued about for this matchup for Canada. It's going to be a great experience, regardless of what happens.
Yeah, and by the way, we should say all the best to Tejan for his
Absolutely.
recovery. Obviously, a really really scary injury, I'm sure, the broken tibia, but sending our best to him for a recovery. I'm sure it'll be a long process, but we're hoping he comes back better. But just to wrap up, just to finish up on this game, like, enjoy it. Everybody that's watching, everybody enjoy this.
Yeah,
Canada have never
absolutely.
been here before. This is new, and I know we're gonna get wrapped up in it. We're gonna be yelling at referee calls, and we're gonna be mad, and if it doesn't go our way, we're gonna be upset. But like, we have to take a moment at some point to be like, this is a Copa America quarterfinal against Venezuela, and Canada are genuinely in with a shout of being in a Copa America semifinal if they play well. They'd play Argentina again probably, because they'll probably beat Ecuador. I'm not sure why the bracket is like that, and they're on the
Yeah,
same side. But
we can spend another 15 minutes on
fully
that, but we
fully
won't.
digress on. There are tons of weird things about this Copa. They go straight to penalties. By the way, there's no extra time
How?
in Copa, which, like, what? But come on, man. Anyway, yeah, enjoy it. Enjoy it. I think the last thing that we should do here quickly, we've talked about a lot of it, we've danced around a lot of them here, but what do you do if you're Jesse Marsh in this game? He hasn't made a ton of changes to his lineups throughout the 5 games he's been in charge here. Obviously, he'll be forced to a little bit, but how much would you change, Michigan? Do you bring Kone back into midfield? Do you play 3 in midfield, or what do you think? What would you do in terms of going about approaching this game?
Yeah, I think for me personally, I would match their 3 in midfield. I think that's going to be a critical part of this game.
Yeah.
And so I'd bring Kone in and maybe push in Osorio a little further forward.
Okay.
Obviously, it's a pretty fluid midfield, so you can do you can switch around it as it goes. And then I'd go probably Larea and Miller on the wings at this point. Larea was
Yeah.
fantastic against Chile, and I just think that Miller Davies partnership is too important right now. Obviously Schaffelberg's going to be in this game. He's going to play probably a
He'll
good.
play the last 35 minutes and
Yeah,
he will
exactly.
explode.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's when you want to put him
Yeah.
out there. Again, like you said, it's a little bit of a younger Venezuela side, so he's not going to get the advantage of running at tired older legs, but he's still, again, I think those are the kind of changes you make, and everything else you're going to have to pull. I think Laren out if you're going to put an
Yeah.
extra midfielder in, which is a tough thing again because defensively he's been so good, but something's not clicking up front there with the 2 strikers. So that would be how I would approach this game.
Yeah. So you're looking at like a 4-3-3 kind of situation here,
Yeah, or a 4-2-3-1.
or 4-4. Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. I think 3 in midfield is the way to go. I'm not sure if Osorio is the profile of the third guy you want in there,
Mhm.
but at this point, at this stage of the competition, I don't think you're like throwing Matthew Choinière or Ali Ahmed in there, right? When they have, I don't think at all seen the pitch under Marsh yet. Like, I don't think that's something that you can do at this stage to throw those guys in there. So I think that probably is where you have to go. But I think I agree. I'm not sure if I think it's particularly likely that we'll see that
Probably not.
Jesse
I
Marsh
mean, he
is going to
hasn't
make a
changed
change
much,
like
like you
that.
said.
Exactly. But and in a quarterfinal, it's not necessarily the time to be experimenting or trying new things. But they have had some time. It has been what it'll be almost a week since the Chile game. So maybe they've been working on some things. They've known it'd likely be Venezuela for most of the time. So I don't know, maybe there'll be some surprises or something that they've been working on. Either way, 9 o'clock Eastern Friday night at AT&T Stadium. I think it's air conditioned. That big Cowboys
You would
Cathedral.
hope they spent enough money on it that
It's
you'd
an
hope they have a bit of
enormous,
AC in there.
absolutely enormous stadium. Yeah, I think air conditioned, but it'll also be, I don't know what time zone Texas is in, 7 p.m. local, so it shouldn't be too bad, the conditions. So just right for again, quarterfinal at a major tournament for the Canadian men's national team. We're going to be watching. I'm sure you guys will be too. And we will talk about it on Monday on the next CPL Newsroom presented by Volkswagen. But moving on from that, the show's title is the CPL Newsroom. Let's talk about our domestic league here in Canada. We had 4 games since we last spoke to you. 2 of them a week ago. We had York United losing 1-0 to Valor FC in Winnipeg. We had Vancouver FC winning their BC derby against Pacific FC. We had on Friday night the craziest game I have seen in ages. Atletico Ottawa 4, Forge FC 3. I think 6 of those 7 goals in the second half. There were own goals. There were weird giveaways. There was a bicycle kick 2 minutes into the game. There was
Oh, you're not wearing the bike helmet.
I don't have the bike helmet here with me. I know that's a really good point, actually. This is why we need to do our shows closer to when the games happen. That's on me. I'll wear that. That's on me. But anyway, that was a crazy game. And then Monday we had the Canada Day Classic between Halifax Wanderers and Calgary FC. 1-0 for the Wanderers in Nova Scotia. A big win for them. So what we're going to do here is we are just going to go, I think, from the bottom to the top of the table and just talk about each team and their first 11 or 12 games of the season, as it would be for some of them, and just kind of do a couple minutes on what we think of where they are and maybe the outlook for the rest of the season. So to start, let's just look at the standings here. We've got at the top, obviously, Atletico Ottawa, 7 points ahead of second place Vancouver FC, who now have a point up on third place and fourth place Forge and York United. The playoff picture rounded out by Pacific FC. Then we got Cavalry on 14, Valor on 10, and Halifax also on 10, but sitting behind them in last place on tiebreakers. Mitchell, let's start at the bottom of the table with the team that was most recently celebrating victory in the Canadian Premier League, the Halifax Wanderers. They went 9 games without a win in the CPL, and now they've won 2 in a row. Are they back? Is the vibe back in Halifax?
I think it is. I think that there's a lot of different factors that we've seen, but from front to back, they've looked miles better. I mean, Jan Fillion had one of his, if not his best month as a Canadian Premier League goalkeeper this past month. You can look moving forward through the defense. Riley Ferrazzo stepped up in a big way with some of the injuries and absences there. But most importantly, I think Ryan Telfer, they finally have a player that's scoring goals consistently, looks confident up top. Mass Farron doing his thing as well to create goals. So they finally have that threat. And now that they're getting the goals, the points are coming. And again, this is such a momentum team, I think, that really, if they can keep this up and keep moving forward, this is a team that could very quickly rise up these standings. Even though they're at the bottom, they are the hottest team in the Canadian Premier League right now.
Yeah. And if you're somehow listening to this show before 2:00 Eastern time on Thursday, congratulations. You get a sneak peek that Patrice Geyser is the manager of the month for June in the CPL. They went undefeated. And I don't think it's, I know that if they hadn't won any games, I don't think that would be something that anybody would be wanting to celebrate that much. But, okay, do have to say the Canada Day game, not in June, famously, that's in July, but still, they do feel like the team that had the best upward trajectory in June. And as you mentioned, Telfer, we talked about Telfer preseason and talked about how he can be an incredibly impactful player for them if he's motivated, if he's in form, if he's healthy. And all of those things are true right now, which is huge for Halifax, who, again, do find themselves in quite a hole outside the playoff picture, but still there's over half a season left, plenty of time. Again, vibes are improving. Moving up the table to Valor. Again, we're at the bottom here, but this is where the wins were last week. They beat York. Mitch, they broke a 3-game losing streak with that victory. Where are you at right now, roughly, with how they're going?
Yeah, I mean they have to find a bit of a run somewhere here. I think only them and Cavalry failed to win back-to-back games this season. So, building on a 1-0 result against York United, which is a huge one for them, considering where York were over the past couple of weeks, is kind of the next step and what we need to see from this team before we can be, confident in them joining the rising trajectory as well. But they've added a couple exciting players. From CS Saint Laurent, Loic Quemi and Safwan Mila, both of whom obviously played incredibly well in that Canadian Championship run that CS Saint Laurent went on, and two Canadian national futsal team players as well. So they're going to bring a lot of that technical talent that you would expect. And Quemi in particular, like a player who scored 17 goals last season, 19 the year before. I know you made the point about Jordy Swibble coming into the season. Like, players don't just get goal scoring numbers like that. They just don't come out of the air. Like, if you can score goals like that, like that you're doing something that will translate to a higher level. So that's a very exciting player for them to add, adding a lot of quality, I think, both in midfield and on top with these two players. So that's exciting. Again, we need to see the consistency from them.
Absolutely. And, great story with the CS Saint Laurent guys. Obviously, one going to Halifax recently as well, Jefferson Alphonse. So that's 3 players now that were part of that incredible Canadian Championship run, getting those professional opportunities after showing themselves. So that part of the pathway is working as intended. So that's good. Moving up the table, who is next? I'm reminding myself it's Cavalry, where
you need to
there
check
is frustration.
for that.
I'm just gonna, yeah, they have been kind of in that 6th place spot for a lot of the last couple of months. Again, a team that's not losing very much, although they did lose this week, but also not winning very much. They have 2 wins in the Canadian Premier League this year. Mitch, this seems like a team that's probably a little frustrated at the moment, right?
If you'd told me before the season that Cavalry would have just 2 wins in their first 12 and scored just 12 goals, like, I would have laughed in your face, genuinely. But obviously we couldn't have anticipated all the injuries and absences they're dealing with and how difficult that's been. Obviously this is a team that's built for depth, but the one position where we've seen that kind of lacking this year is the number 9 spot, and especially having a threat like Meyer Bevan's been in past years to get in behind and stretch opponents and maybe attack teams in different ways. Tobias Warshevsky's been excellent, but he's a pretty unique attacking player who maybe isn't, always perfectly suited to that hold up number 9 in a traditional sense. And obviously news for them this week, losing another decent attacking player in Lucas Diaz, who maybe wasn't as consistent as they probably would have liked, considering his pedigree, but still a tremendous player for them on his day. And yeah, you feel like if there's anyone who kind of needs to maybe make a signing right now, Cavalry having another attacking weapon with Akio out long-term, Musi out long-term, Fargo starting to work back, but having some injury troubles as well. Like, this is a team that could really use an injection of goals right now.
Yeah, no, the injuries have been a problem for them. Even like Bradley Camden's been out for a few weeks here, and he's often an important piece. Musi, it sounds like he's going to be out for at least another few weeks. We're still waiting for an official update on Willie Akio, which it is a concern. But I do think that this is a team that has had its feelers out in the transfer market. So I think maybe stay tuned to Cavalry over the next few weeks to see if they do have some roster spots open now too. Obviously, after Jack Barrett getting recalled from his loan. Lucas Diaz getting recalled from his loan. Oh, they did add Joseph Holiday, though, so that goalkeeper slot is filled. But still, there is a spot there. We will see.
Just to let everyone know, there's no easy Charlie O'Connor-Clarke, Fabrizio Romano name. And I've been thinking about it since he started breaking news, but I'm sorry, I don't think it can be done.
Good. I think that's good for me.
Yeah, probably is
I'm
for the
okay with
best.
that. All right, bringing the standings back up. Let's move on. Pacific FC. They are also a team that I'm a little worried about right now. They obviously lost to Vancouver last week for the second time. 2 losses to their provincial rivals in 2 games where Vancouver kind of just looked like they wanted it more at times. But that's 2 losses in a row for Pacific here. 1 win in their last 8 games. Ever since they started the season with 2 wins, a draw, and then another win, and no goals conceded. Since then, they have not really been at that level. Mitch, are we concerned about Pacific still in a playoff spot, still keeping pace with the pack, but probably need to start scoring some goals?
Yeah, fewest goals scored in the league is never something I thought I'd be saying about a Pacific FC team.
Yeah.
But yeah, they've dried up at a horrible time as well. Obviously, they've got that crucial Canadian Championship fixture coming up this Wednesday at Starlight Stadium, and a tough back-to-back as well. Obviously, they got to go play the top team in the league in Ottawa this week, and I believe that's on Sunday as well. So they've got to go to Ontario on Sunday, back to Starlight Stadium on Wednesday. But what I will say is the one thing that's maybe gotten this Pacific team going more than anything else in the past few years, even dating back to their playoff run last year, is a bit of that adversity. I mean, we saw them go like coast to coast to coast and win in the CPL playoffs last year. So sometimes this is a team that, when things get the hardest and you'd least expect it,
Mm-hmm.
they can pull off some tremendous things. With that being said, you wouldn't expect it right now, and that's the issue for Pacific FC.
No. The last goal scored by a Pacific forward player, like a winger, a striker, something like that, somebody who's not a midfielder or a defender, was the Canadian Championship win over Atletico Ottawa. When I think it was Josh Hurd and Eamon Salouf both scored. Since then, their goals have come from Sean Young from the penalty spot. I think Stefan Yates has scored. Thomas Mayer-Jaguar scored. Like these are good goals to get. You always want to have scoring from all over the pitch, but you need your attacking players to be contributing more. And I think they know that. And I think that is pretty much what is going to make or break the next few months for Pacific, is if they can get these players going, if they can get Rion Moore scoring consistently, if they can get Salouf back healthy and into good form. These are the things that are probably going to dictate whether the rest of the season goes the way that they want it to. And again, you kind of want it to happen quickly with that Whitecaps tie coming up very, very fast. And again, it will be a lot of fun. And maybe that is the kind of motivation that they need at this point, that Vancouver game, having the Whitecaps in front of a huge, we're hearing potentially sold out crowd at Starlight Stadium. If there are tickets still available, then they won't be for long. So if you want to go and you haven't got them yet, get on that very quickly, because that is a hot ticket in Langford, British Columbia. Next up in the CPL table, it's York United, who maybe are the closest contenders to Halifax in terms of the team on the most upward trajectory of the last few weeks. Since Benjamin Mora took over, I know they just lost to Valor, but since Benjamin Mora took over, they have been very different, I'd say, than they were under Martin Nash. But it has been working. They've got 2 wins, a draw, and a loss under Mora. All of that in June. Mitch, you've watched a lot of this team under him. You've been to a lot of these games. What has surprised you, impressed you about the changes in this club so far?
I think the biggest thing that has surprised and impressed me is the way the group has handled adversity since Benjamin Mora has come in. You look at the red card for Austin Ricci a few weeks ago, and that is a moment that I think past York United teams would have just crumpled under. They would have gotten all over the referee. They would have fallen apart within themselves. And they didn't. They go out. They hold on. They get a big home victory against Vancouver FC this past week. Obviously, it ends in a loss, but Brian Wright has 2 disallowed goals. They're probably the right calls, but borderline enough to be frustrating. And after the game, Benjamin Moore wouldn't even entertain that as an excuse.
Yeah.
It was all about, the referees have a hard job. We can't, those are kind of the factors that go into soccer. Like, yeah, I just liked seeing that from a team again that has been thrown off so often in the past by kind of these outside factors. Um, Now we have to see how they respond. Obviously, they're playing the hottest team in the CPL right now, in the Halifax Wanderers. I believe they host this weekend, and that
That's right.
feels weird to say. But yeah, that's again, it's how can they bounce back from this adversity? But with the way we've seen them handle adversity so far under Mora, that's what I've been most impressed by.
Yeah, I agree. That's a big game against Halifax. All right, moving up to Forge FC. They're in third place. They play Toronto FC next week in the Canadian Championship. Kwesi Poku, Player of the Month for June in the Canadian Premier League. He's been outstanding in that striker position. Forge did just lose a really weird game to Ottawa, though. It feels like the vibes are pretty much where they normally are at this point in the season for Forge, right? They're kind of keeping pace. They're not too worried, not too excited. This is kind of where they usually are, right?
Yeah. I think for me, if there's any kind of concern right now, and it feels easy to say after a game in which they conceded 4 goals, but there are some defensive concerns. Like they did score 10 goals in June, so obviously right now the attack is clicking at a pretty good
Yeah,
clip. But I think their past 2 matches are 2 of the top 3 expected goals against they've allowed all season, and they allowed 8 goals in this past month as well. So for me, I think they maybe need to find a little bit more consistency at the back. It always seems to be conversations like, is it Malik or Garvin Matusala? They've done different things with the fullbacks or taking fullbacks out completely against Atletico Ottawa this past week. Like it feels like it's one of those things. Goalkeepers we've seen swap as well. It feels like it's one of those things where they do have so much depth and different options, and they want to be able to use those in different situations. But I wonder if at this stage of the season, it wouldn't just suit them to find a little bit more consistency and find a back line that can maybe stick together for a few matches, especially, of course, with a big game for them looming, and a bunch of home games coming up as well, where they've been
yeah,
excellent this season. I think just one game they haven't won at home so far in the CPL. Obviously, coming up against Toronto FC on Wednesday, June 10th, we'll both be there. At Tim Hortons Field, that's another one you should grab your tickets to. I don't know how you're going to get to both matches, but we will leave that up to you guys to determine.
yeah,
But no, yeah, I think that defensive concerns, offense is rolling, and like I said, they're about kind of middling right now in terms of their Forge form.
yeah. We need to get some faster planes to get us to both of these games. Yeah, no, you're right. It's a Forge team that I think we haven't seen a lot of full 90-minute performances from. They had a very good stretch in Ottawa, but obviously we know how that game ended. Against Valor, they dominated the first half, but let them into the game way too much in the second half, and at that point, it became a lot closer than they would have wanted. So again, it's Fortune that does want to put together that full, comprehensive control of a game. 2 more. Let's run through these quickly. Vancouver FC, Forge's next opponent, actually, and the only team to beat them at Tim Hortons Field this year, I believe. Vancouver.
Correct.
Derby winners again last weekend. This team is kind of hard to gauge because they're sometimes very, very good and very entertaining, but they've also had some much tougher performances, like the one against Halifax 2 weeks ago,
That's
where they
not the
lost
good
4-0.
vote.
Yeah, but Vancouver, where are we with this team right now? Because I think that they are, do we feel confident that they definitely are, where they belong in the table, that they are a playoff team this year?
I think so, and I think the biggest story for them
Yeah,
this week, obviously, is that Alejandro Diaz's loan has been extended.
absolutely.
Yeah, certainly no guarantee that he would be back. Obviously, in a loan deal, the Norwegian club Sandal has a lot of control. So credit to Vancouver for getting those negotiations done, and a player who maybe now, obviously, a player who's proven himself in this league number nines like that, super difficult to come by. We've talked about at least 2 to 3 teams already who are struggling to get that kind of production from them. So to bring one back, but you wonder if now that he's settled a little bit more, knowing his future, that will help him as well to go on
Yeah.
and live up to the heights of Golden Boot Alejandro Diaz that we saw a couple years back with Pacific, who was, everything he touched went into the net basically. I do think one thing they're still looking to sign, according to Afshin Gutby, is a attacking midfielder, kind of to link though that excellent front two of Diaz and Dyer to the midfield. They don't feel they've had that link, be so great this season. So that's something they're looking into. But yeah, otherwise, there's a lot to like about how Vancouver's been playing this season. And really performing in the big games as well. They beat Forge, they beat Pacific twice. They seem to get up for those big matches, which again can be the difference maker when you're trying to make the playoffs.
Absolutely. And just all around, I think a fun team to watch. But it would
Yeah,
be interesting to see if they do bring in
that always helps.
a creative player in attacking midfield, because right now their midfield is good at, I think, stopping those transitions with guys like Garcia and Vasco Fry, but those aren't necessarily the creative engines of a team. So that would be interesting to see a new dynamic. Finishing up at the top of the table, though, Atletico Ottawa, 25 points. They are clear above the rest of the league quite considerably. It's good times in Ottawa right now, Mitch, right? Even when things aren't going well for them and they are giving up weird goals against Forge at home, it still somehow works out. Like, are we buying our own hype from the start of the season that this team is, genuinely what it was advertised as?
I think so, and I didn't expect to be at this stage. Like I thought they'd be
Yeah.
maybe third, maybe pushing into the top three kind of thing, and starting to figure it out at this stage. So the fact that they're this far, in my estimation, ahead of schedule is incredibly impressive. And we saw them face their first real adversity of the season, obviously losing at home to York United. They bounced back, going away and getting a draw at Calgary in a match where they played excellently, and then beating Forge at home in a crazy match. And this is a team that's already proven they can win in different ways. They can win the close games. They can put teams away when they need to, and they can win the wild ones as well. So everything we've seen from them so far this season suggests that they have, a CPL Shield contender title, all over them. They've done it before. They have that as well. So yeah, there's just so much to like about this Ottawa team and the way they're performing right now.
There is, and possibly working on a little bit more in the transfer window. So keep an eye on that too. The scary team may get a little bit scarier. Anyway, we did it. We got through all 8 teams. That was great, Mitchell. Thank you very much. I think we've not gotten too deep into any of them, but some of the big storylines, kind of generally a temperature check of where each CPL team is at the moment. All of them back in action this weekend on OneSoccer, as you can see here on your screens. Starting off Friday night, Forge FC, Vancouver FC at Tim Hortons Field, 7:00 Eastern. So, it should be wrapped up just when Canada's kicking off against Venezuela. So you are able to watch both, thank God. Saturday afternoon, though, York United, Halifax Wanderers, 4:00 Eastern at York Lions Stadium, followed by a doubleheader on Sunday of Atletico Ottawa and Pacific at 1 Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific time. So, nice early wake up on a Sunday for those on the West Coast. Not that 10 a.m. is that early. I'm just it's not that early, but it is in the morning. And then finally, the Tony Bet match of the week on Sunday in Winnipeg, Valor FC hosting Cavalry, 4 local, 5 Eastern, 3 Mountain Time. That is another jam-packed week of some teams that are looking to either extend streaks or maybe get back on the horse after difficult and weird results over the last 7 days. We will, as always, be back next week to break them all down in the usual fashion. We'll also break down the Canada-Venezuela game and, whether we're talking about the end of a Copa América or the beginning of another match against Argentina in a semifinal. We will get to that bridge when we do next week. But otherwise, we look forward to seeing you again. We thank you for sticking through us for all of this. We thank you, Volkswagen, for sponsoring the podcast. And again, we will see you next time.